Preparing the world for immortality. This is SkyWatchTV for Thursday, February 4th, 2016. I'm Derek Gilbert. Some 500 years after Ponce de Leon landed at Florida, allegedly to search for the Fountain of Youth, researchers in genetics, robotics, artificial intelligence, and nanotechnology think that they're about to unlock the secret of living forever. British researchers, as we told you yesterday, have been given permission by the government there to begin gene editing experiments on human embryos. Now, there are problems with this. As I mentioned yesterday, the procedure involves creating human life in the laboratory for the express purpose of experimenting on it and then destroying it. If you believe, as we do, that life begins at conception, this should be a moral problem for you. Secondly, to create embryos, you need human eggs. Harvesting eggs from donors is not without risk for the donors. And again, you're creating life in the lab specifically to destroy it again. Now, there is a way around that, of course, and that is human cloning. This is one of the big arguments that I raised when I was in secular talk radio 10 years ago, and here in the state of Missouri, we were debating a constitutional amendment to make embryonic stem cell research part of the state constitution. Well, the same argument applies here. If you're creating human life in the lab, whether by cloning or by fertilizing eggs in a petri dish, you're creating human life expressly to destroy it again. Now, if these embryos are not destroyed, if they are allowed to develop full term, you're potentially creating a new species entirely. The DNA editing process is changing the germline, which means that these genetic changes can be passed down to future generations. You're tinkering with God's design and making changes that you may not be aware of. The editing process is not yet precise. The purpose of the research, as described by the scientists, is in fact noble, and we understand that. Genetic diseases can be terrible, and preventing them is a noble goal. But human beings, being what we are, how long before the drive to prevent genetic disease becomes a means of creating designer babies? We've already stepped onto that slippery slope by allowing editing human DNA in human embryos. Right now, the limit in England is 7 days. That's the length of time these embryos will be allowed to develop before they must be destroyed. Apparently, that is within the comfort zone of most government officials, legislators in England. But when perceptions change, as they will, we just look at the last 10 years here in the United States and the way our perception of the gay movement has changed. When it becomes less offensive to us to allow embryos to develop to 20 weeks, third trimester, all the way, we will have crossed the threshold. In fact, we've already crossed the Rubicon. This ultimately will lead to eugenics, plain and simple. The same goal of Germany during the reign of Adolf Hitler. And to an extent, there are some in the transhumanist movement who recognize this and are concerned about it. There is a difference, of course, between trying to prevent disease and trying to select for desirable traits. But it's a very thin line. And not only is the desire to transform humanity just repackaged eugenics, it does in fact favor the wealthy and will further stratify human society. Who will be able to afford these cutting-edge technologies to prevent disease at first? Well, the wealthy, of course, those who already have advantages when it comes to income, health and nutrition, access to education, so forth. Imagine how much more difficult it will be for those on the bottom rungs of society's ladder to climb that ladder after a couple generations of enhanced children are born to the wealthy. Now, not all transhumanists accept that premise, of course. They tend to be very optimistic about the egalitarian nature of the transhumanist movement and the role that government can play. Zoltan Istvan, the author of The Transhumanist Wager and the Transhumanist Party candidate for president, believes that the Transhumanist Bill of Rights will be part of the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights within 3 to 5 years. In fact, he's calling for the United States government to establish an agency to oversee research into immortality, believing that it will be shared with all people. Now, I've interviewed Zoltan a couple of times, and we get along very well. I like him. He's a nice man. But I believe he's naive when it comes to the role that government will play and those within government with influence to direct the role that government would play in this type of initiative. You see, we humans are inherently flawed. We are fallen. We're selfish. We look after our own interests at the expense of everyone else. It's what we Christians call sin. Even if a cure for death can be discovered, which I don't necessarily think is possible, the odds of it being made available to all people is approximately 0. It will be used like other snares used to manipulate, motivate, and ensnare humans, say, like money or sex, to consolidate power over others. It will be withheld from those who resist and granted to those who go with the program. Political power. And ironically, that was the real purpose of Ponce de Leon's landing at Florida. He was seeking political influence and authority. The whole story about the search for the Fountain of Youth was invented by a political enemy of Ponce de Leon's to make him look foolish. Now, there is another interesting potential consequence of this search for immortality. Regardless of whether it's achieved through genetics, robotics, merging our biology with artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, the Bible tells us that there is a day coming when people will seek death and will not find it. They will long to die, but death will flee from them. Revelation 9, verse 6. So what if the search for immortality proves to be successful, or even partly successful, if human life is radically extended? That would be success in human terms anyway, but it would in fact turn out to be a curse during the Great Tribulation. We're all immortal beings. The only question is where and how you plan to spend the rest of eternity. Again, for more on the motives and potential consequences of the drive for immortality, we recommend the SkyWatchTV produced documentary film, Inhuman, The Final Phase of Man is Here. In other news, diplomatic cables obtained by the Jerusalem Post show that Israeli officials are growing worried about the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, or BDS movement. This has been growing since a stunt last year by the Palestinian Authority when it called for FIFA, the international governing body for soccer, the World Cup, to expel Israel. Israel's Strategic Affairs Ministry is building a staff now to respond to this threat. But here in the U.S., the state of Indiana has become the latest U.S. state to stand with Israel. The House of Representatives there voted last week to target businesses or other entities that participate in the BDS movement. Indiana's public retirement system will divest from businesses or other entities that divest from Israel. This follows earlier anti-BDS legislation from Tennessee, New York, Pennsylvania, Florida, and Illinois. The war of words is continuing between Russia and Turkey. Last week, as I told you yesterday, Turkey accused a Russian Su-34 fighter jet of violating its airspace. And now Russia is accusing Turkey of shelling civilian positions across the border in Syria. Now, why would the Turks do that? A couple of possibilities. It's possible that they're striking Kurdish positions. As we said before, the Turks consider the Kurds a bigger threat than the Islamic State. Or they could be trying to help the Syrian rebels who are coming under fire from Syrian government troops backed by Iranian forces and Russian air power. In other words, it appears that if this is true, Turkey is actively involved in the fighting on the ground in Syria on the side of the terrorists. Middle Eastern news sources reporting that Turkey has moved additional warplanes to bases near the Syrian border and has given its pilots orders to strike without further orders at any aircraft that strays into Turkish airspace. It's possible that that Su-34 did in fact cross into Turkish airspace and that Vladimir Putin is trying to draw Turkey into a shooting war, which would go badly for Turkey. The question then would be whether Turkey's allies in NATO, which include the United States, would come to Turkey's aid. We mentioned yesterday that the White House is planning to beef up American military presence in Eastern Europe. Russia, as expected, not happy about this. The Russian embassy in Washington, D.C. released a statement yesterday calling the move destabilizing and detrimental to European security. And if push did come to shove with Russia in Eastern Europe, things would get ugly in a hurry, according to a new study by the RAND Corporation, a Washington think tank. If Russian tanks rolled into the Baltics tomorrow, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, according to the RAND Corporation, NATO forces would be overrun in less than 3 days. That's the takeaway from a series of war games that they've been running with American military officers and civilian officials. The official report issued by the RAND Corporation didn't pull any punches. It said, as currently postured, NATO cannot successfully defend the territory of its most exposed members. That would, of course, be the Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. And it's no coincidence that this report was issued on Tuesday, the same day the United States announced it was moving tanks, armored vehicles, personnel, and equipment to Eastern Europe. Secretary of State John Kerry in Rome for an anti-ISIS summit calls the Islamic State apostates. Said the group has hijacked a great religion and lied about its real meaning and purpose. With all due respect to Secretary Kerry, he's either badly misinformed or he's posturing. The Islamic State is in fact living out a purer form of Islam, closer to the words and the example of Muhammad than anything we've seen in the West for more than 100 years. And finally, another report from Israel that a prominent rabbi is saying publicly that the arrival of Messiah is imminent. Rabbi Mattathieu Glazerson released a video this week that features a message from Kabbalist Rabbi Chaim Cohen, who says he received a message from heaven that the process of salvation has begun. Now, Rabbi Glazerson, who's an expert in Torah codes, includes some codes in his video to verify Rabbi Cohen's statement. Says the only place in the Torah where the phrase redemption started shows up in the codes is connected to Genesis chapter 49. That's where Jacob calls his sons together to prophesy over them. Near the phrase, Rabbi Glazerson says, he found the dates 5776, or 5775 and 5776, which correspond to the Hebrew years 2014, September 2014 through September 2016. Rabbi Glazerson also says that he's finding many Torah code tables lately with the dates 5775 and 5776, indicating that the Messiah's arrival is near. Now, we'll say again for the record that at SkyWatch TV, we accept as absolutely true only those prophecies contained in the Bible. We're looking for Messiah's return, not arrival, but it is important to understand what other faiths believe because it dictates how they act. Now, this past Tuesday night on SkyWatch TV, we talked about some prophetic implications of the Bible, specifically the location of Armageddon and what the battle is all about. We've been taught, many of us, through the years that Armageddon will be fought at the Valley of Megiddo, but there's a problem with that. The Hebrew phrase Har Megiddon means Mount of Megiddo, and Megiddo's a valley. There's no mountain there. You want to find out where Armageddon will be fought? You can find Tuesday's interview with Dr. Michael Heiser on the SkyWatch TV channel on Roku. Also, SkyWatch TV channel on YouTube. Look that up and hang on because it's a very quickly moving and information-packed half hour. The new book, The Unseen Realm, highly recommended for your reference library. Coming up Tuesday, we're going to introduce to you two new members of the SkyWatch TV team. You've seen Josh Peck before here on this program. He's been a guest on the last couple of Sci Friday broadcasts and will be with us again this Friday. But this time you'll get a chance to meet Christina Peck as well and hear her story. I was not aware of her backstory, and it was, it's very powerful. You'll meet the Pecks Tuesday night on SkyWatch TV on the Christian Television Network. That's DirecTV Channel 376, Dish Network Channel 267, and the Glory Star Satellite Channel 117. It also streams to the internet at the Christian Television Network's website, ctnonline.com. During the month of February, our gift to you for your financial support, on which we depend, is this lovely cross. It's made from resin, but it looks just like stone. And on the cross is the central message of the gospel, John 3:16. It is our gift to you for your financial gift of any amount during the month of February. While supplies last, instructions on how to donate posted at skywatchtv.com. And of course, you can always help us with a click of the mouse. We post here on the website, Facebook, Twitter, and of course our YouTube channel. And by clicking like or share or subscribe, especially at that YouTube channel, click the subscribe button. You can help us get the word out about the sea changes taking place in the world around us. And when I get motivated and actually put something on the interwebs, which is most every day, you'll find it here, Twitter, Facebook, and my website. And of course, my email address, always open for your comments, questions, and suggestions, dgilbert@skywatchtv.com. Thank you for watching as we keep watch. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is SkyWatch TV.